You can feel it building already, because even with all the noise around the quarterback room right now, there's one guy quietly putting in the work every single day and making people inside the building pay attention. Nobody expected this storyline to get this interesting this fast, but the deeper you look into what's happening behind the scenes, the more it feels like this competition is far from over. We have a lot to discuss, so without further ado, let's get straight to the point. Be sure to click the like button and tell me, do you think Rodgers should stay with the Steelers? I want to know your opinion. Now, let's get to the news. Will Howard is quietly becoming one of the most fascinating storylines inside the Pittsburgh Steelers organization right now. And despite all the attention surrounding Aaron Rodgers and Drew Aller, there are people inside the building who clearly believe this sixth-round quarterback still has a real opportunity to become something much bigger than anyone expected. The national conversation keeps focusing on Rodgers potentially arriving in Pittsburgh and the Steelers investing a third-round pick into Drew Aller. But what is getting overlooked is how strongly the coaching staff continues to speak about Will Howard behind the scenes. Mike McCarthy did not sound like someone talking about a disposable backup quarterback when he discussed Howard after the draft. He openly said he believes Howard can eventually become a starter in the NFL. And those comments matter because McCarthy has worked with elite quarterbacks for decades. What makes this entire situation even more interesting is that the Steelers could have easily buried Howard on the depth chart and treated him like another developmental arm, but instead, they continue investing time into his growth. The organization clearly sees traits worth developing. And when you start examining everything surrounding Howard, you begin to understand why Pittsburgh may not be giving up on him anytime soon. Inside the Steelers' facility, Howard's work ethic is reportedly becoming impossible to ignore. Reports coming from the building describe him staying on the practice field long after everyone else leaves, putting in extra work daily while trying to absorb everything he can from the coaching staff. Rich Walsh even stated that Howard may be one of the hardest workers on the entire team, which is the exact type of reputation that earns respect inside an NFL locker room. That kind of mentality matters because Howard knows he was not drafted with guarantees. He understands the reality of being a sixth-round quarterback in today's NFL. Every single rep matters. Every preseason throw matters. Every practice session matters. And according to the information coming out of Pittsburgh, he is approaching this opportunity exactly the way the Steelers hoped he would. What may help Howard, more than anything, is the environment now surrounding the quarterback room. Mike McCarthy is already deeply involved in rebuilding mechanics and fundamentals for the younger quarterbacks, and Howard himself has openly talked about how much he is learning already. He described McCarthy as a true quarterback guru, explaining how the coach studies film from older NFL eras, showing clips of Joe Montana and Rich Gannon while teaching footwork and timing concepts. For a developing quarterback, that kind of mentorship can completely reshape a career trajectory. Howard admitted he is still trying to discover his identity as an NFL player, and McCarthy appears determined to help mold that identity correctly from the beginning. The Steelers are not simply throwing Howard into the background. They are actively coaching him, refining him, and preparing him to potentially handle meaningful football at some point. And physically, Howard does possess several traits that make evaluators curious. At 6'4" and 236 pounds, he has the build teams look for in AFC North football. He can absorb contact, move inside the pocket, and survive the physical style that dominates division games late in the season. His arm strength is considered more than good enough for NFL standards, and while it may not be viewed as elite like Drew Aller's, there is enough velocity there to make professional-level throws consistently. Another underrated aspect of Howard's profile is his athleticism. He is not viewed as a dynamic dual-threat quarterback in the mold of Josh Allen, but he can absolutely move. He has acceleration, power as a runner, and the ability to extend plays with his legs. Those traits become valuable in modern offenses because defensive coordinators increasingly force quarterbacks to improvise under pressure. Then there is the mental side of his game. Reports have described Howard as having a photographic memory, something that could become extremely important as he learns NFL concepts and protections. Processing speed separates backup quarterbacks from starters in this league, and Pittsburgh clearly hopes Howard's intelligence can help accelerate his development over the next couple of seasons. Steelers coaches also know Howard arrives with experience handling pressure on massive stages. At Ohio State, he played the best football of his college career during the college football playoff run, helping guide the Buckeyes to a national championship. That matters because Pittsburgh values players who elevate under pressure rather than collapse under it. Howard already demonstrated he can perform in huge moments with national expectations surrounding him. What is especially intriguing is the comparison beginning to emerge between Howard and Dak Prescott. The similarities are not being made because Howard is already that caliber of player. Instead, the discussion centers around physical traits, size, arm talent, processing ability, and developmental potential. Dak Prescott himself entered the NFL with questions and needed significant growth before becoming a franchise quarterback. Pittsburgh may believe Howard could follow a somewhat similar developmental path if everything breaks correctly. But this is where the reality check enters the conversation. Howard absolutely has flaws, and the Steelers know it. One of the biggest concerns surrounding him is how limited his out-of-structure passing was in college. When plays broke down at Ohio State, Howard often relied on his legs rather than improvising as a passer. In today's NFL, elite quarterbacks must create explosive plays outside the original design of the offense. There are also questions regarding his progression reads and full-field processing. At Ohio State, much of the offense involved quick decisions, one-read concepts, RPO structures, and simplified reads. NFL defenses are entirely different. Defensive disguises become more complex, windows close faster, and quarterbacks must consistently manipulate coverages before and after the snap. The Steelers still do not fully know whether Howard can eventually master that part of the game at a starting caliber level. His downfield accuracy also remains a major talking point. While Howard showed touch on certain throws, consistency pushing the ball beyond 10 air yards was not always reliable during his time at both Kansas State and Ohio State. Some of those issues stemmed directly from his footwork, particularly the narrow base he frequently played with inside the pocket. Ironically, those same footwork problems are part of the reason Pittsburgh drafted Drew Aller as well. The Steelers' coaching staff now faces the challenge of rebuilding mechanics for both young quarterbacks simultaneously. That creates an incredibly fascinating quarterback competition for the future, because both players are essentially entering long-term developmental programs under Mike McCarthy. And perhaps the biggest challenge for Howard is simply adjusting to NFL reality. At Ohio State, he played surrounded by elite talent everywhere. He had Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, elite offensive linemen, and dominant running backs around him every week. The NFL removes those overwhelming talent advantages. Every defense is fast. Every secondary is disciplined. Every pass rush can ruin a game instantly. Howard now has to prove he can elevate his own level, rather than relying on superior supporting casts. Still, the Steelers appear willing to give him opportunities if he earns them. There are already several realistic scenarios where Howard could eventually see the field. If Aaron Rodgers retires sooner than expected, Pittsburgh could suddenly face an open quarterback battle. If Rodgers suffers injuries during the season, backup opportunities immediately become available. And if Howard eventually develops faster than Drew Aller, the organization may have no choice but to seriously evaluate him as a legitimate starting option down the road. That is what makes this entire story so compelling for Steelers fans. Howard is not arriving with franchise quarterback expectations attached to him. There is no pressure from draft position forcing the organization to play him. Everything he earns will come through development, discipline, and performance. Sometimes those are the quarterbacks who surprise the entire league. The Steelers clearly understand this will take patience. They know Howard is still raw in several critical areas, but they also seem convinced there is enough talent, intelligence, and work ethic there to justify continuing the investment. And if Mike McCarthy truly succeeds in reshaping his mechanics and sharpening his mental processing, Pittsburgh may eventually uncover far more value from this pick than anyone initially imagined. Now, the biggest question becomes whether Howard can actually capitalize when the opportunity finally arrives. Because in the NFL, backup quarterbacks rarely receive many chances, especially sixth-round picks. When the door opens, even briefly, you either prove you belong or the league moves on quickly. Pittsburgh appears determined to prepare Howard for that eventual moment, whenever it comes. So Steelers fans, after hearing everything happening behind the scenes with Will Howard, do you believe there is a real possibility he could eventually become Pittsburgh's quarterback of the future? Or do you still think Drew Aller is clearly the better long-term option? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to subscribe for more Steelers coverage all season long. Leave a like on the video, and click the next video on your screen, because the latest Steelers updates are waiting for you. Right here.